Coming up on our right hand side, towering above us, the white curved building, is the 4 Points by Sheraton Hotel, Sydney's largest hotel with 632 rooms. Imagine being the housekeeper there and having to make the beds in 632 rooms every morning. My daughters would fail the job interview. They can't do one bed of a morning, let alone 632. And we'll be back down in this area at the end of our tour. It's the King Street Wharf area just down to our left, and that is where our tour terminates. Now coming down into, obviously a bit of roadwork going on here, but into what's known as the King Street Wharf area, and there's an interesting building with architecture coming up on our left hand side with like a lattice work or honeycomb around the outside of the building. That's the head office of the Macquarie Bank, which is known as the Millionaires Club in Sydney, the Millionaire Maker. There are more millionaires on the payroll at the Macquarie Bank, which is an investment bank, than any other banking institution in Australia. Barangaroo is an Aboriginal word, the Aborigines being the natives of Australia that came here via land bridge from Asia over 70,000 years ago. Out of all the negroid races of people, the darker skinned races of people, the Aborigines are the most akin to Caucasians. Out of a population of 23 million people here, there are about 500,000 Aborigines, and we take it back to 1/8 of their bloodline. If you have 1/8 of an Aborigine's blood in you, you can be classified as one. These wharves on the left hand side used to be Sydney's main container terminal, right next to the city. That's been moved down to Bondi Bay near Sydney Airport. And we're making our way down into the rocks area, named after the rocky outcrops of Sydney's bedrock, called sandstone. The whole of Australia was under the ocean 300 million years ago, and over 250 million years sediments of sand were deposited, compacted together, and they form the sedimentary bedrock that we see today. There it is on the right, and it's, as you can see, very close to the surface, and more of it coming up on our left hand side. Now the rocks area was where the European settlement of Sydney first began, back on the 26th of January in 1788. Come on, it's a pedestrian crossing. And the tall tower above us in front, shortly on the right, is the harbour control tower. So it controls all the shipping in, out and around the harbour. We call it the pill because it controls all the berths in the harbour. They're getting worse as the day goes on. Up on the right hand side, up the hill there, is Observatory Hill, home to the Sydney Observatory, no longer used for observatory purposes, but it's home to Australia's one and only nuclear clock that keeps time for the whole of Australia. And coming up on our right hand side is the Garrison Church, named that because that's where the soldiers used to have their church services, the Redcoats as they were known. And coming up on our left hand side is the Hero of Waterloo Tavern, a little sandstone building here. Interestingly enough, when they were building this hotel on our left, a heavy lead tax was imposed on completed buildings in Sydney, and of course most windows back then had lead holding all the panes of glass together. So to get around that lead tax, you can see the blanked out windows up to the left.
Oh, yeah.
They never put any glass in. It's such a lovely area around here. It's very historic, lots of beautiful old terrace houses as you can see on the left hand side, and really this is where the European settlement of Sydney began. And we're coming under the Sydney Harbour Bridge, opened in 1932 at a cost of $20 million. It and my father celebrated their 80th birthdays 2 years ago. Now, this is the start of George Street, the main street of Sydney. A very popular pub for St Patrick's Day is right here on the right-hand side, the Mercantile Hotel, one of Sydney's Irish pubs. They serve green beer there on Patrick's Day. And right where we are here on Saturday and Sunday each week are the Rocks Markets, right where we're driving now. Now, we're coming down to a walking tour that's going to go for about 20 minutes or so. One of Sydney's hop-on, hop-off buses on the left-hand side. Have they got anyone on board? Oh yeah, one up the front, up top. Now, coming up on the right-hand side is one of the entrances to Wynyard Underground Railway Station. Part of the city's circle loop that travels in a loop around our city. There are 6 stations on it: Central, Town Hall, Wynyard, Circular Quay, St James and Museum. Our buses, trains and ferries are a great way of getting around Sydney. Only a couple of dollars will pretty much get you wherever you need to go. Now, there's incredible little alleyways tucked away down here in the city, and explore them when you're walking around. They are quite safe. Have a look at Angel Place just here on the left-hand side. Look down and up. Look at the bird cages hanging there. It's called Bird Cage Alley, and there's a cafe that Monday to Friday comes out underneath that, and it's a really good place to go down and have a coffee. On our left-hand side is Martin Place, a pedestrian plaza spanning 5 city blocks. And on the left-hand side, the GPO, the General Post Office, Sydney's #1 post office, with a postcode of 2000. And coming up on the right, Sydney's iconic Apple store. Quite an impressive looking building, isn't it?
Is it close too?
Coming up on the left-hand side, come on bus, we've got Ultra Old World, and it's called the Strand Arcade. It dates back to 1891. Have a look into the left. You really are stepping back in time on our left-hand side.
Oh wow.
There's a coffee shop in there with the most beautiful copper and brass coffee machine that dates back probably 100 years. Just gorgeous. One block down to our left is Westfield, and that's the base of Sydney Tower, the tallest building in Australia, 1,000 feet above the footpath, 308 metres. On the right-hand side, we've got the Queen Victoria building. Back in the 1980s, it was renovated, and it's now a beautiful shopping centre with 3 levels of stunning shops in there. And in the centre of the building, in the top floor, is a clock which was built by the Queen's clockmaker. And on the hour, every hour, it does things. So that's worth a look. Coming up on the right-hand side is a larger-than-life statue of Queen Victoria. One of her favourite sayings was, "We are not amused." She doesn't look too amused there with pigeon poop on it. And coming up on the opposite right-hand corner, we've got the Sydney Town Hall. Inside the Sydney Town Hall is one of the largest pipe organs in the Southern Hemisphere, with over 10,000 pipes. And the stairs on the front, the staircase on the front of the Town Hall there, do you remember back before mobile phones? I know it's a while ago now, but okay, so when I was starting dating at 17, 18 years of age, there was no mobile phones. You had your home phone. It was one of those dial phones too. You spin the dial and it goes click, 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 back, spin it again. So whenever you were organising to meet your date here in the city, once you left home and caught public transport in, you had no way of communicating. But the instruction was always, "I'll meet you on the steps in the front of the Town Hall." And that's where you always met your date. Or not if you were stood up, as the case may be. And we're about to stop at Pitt Street, named after William Pitt, who was one of the early Prime Ministers of England. The McDonald's on the left-hand corner here is home to the first ever McCafe in the world. They trialled it here, it was such a success they rolled the McCafe concept out worldwide. Now we're coming into the middle of Hyde Park. That's why this is called Park Street. We're very simple people in Australia. And this is a park covering 42 acres right here in the centre of the city, named after Hyde Park in London. And the roads around the outskirts of the park, oh, by the way, these teepees on the right hand side, can you see the images on them?
Yeah.
They're like a TV screen. They're quite incredible at night time. You should see them. The streets around the outskirts of Hyde Park was the colony's first horse race course. So this is where we had our first horse races. And the statue on our right hand side is Captain James Cook, who was the European credited with discovering Australia in April 1770. Now actually, he wasn't the first European to land here. The Dutch and the Spanish had beaten him, but they were lost. They didn't know where they were. And it wasn't until Captain James Cook landed here in April 1770, just down near Sydney Airport, that he realised he'd landed in Terra Australis, the Great Southern Land, and named it on behalf of the King of England as New South Wales. And that's where we get the name of our state from. The tall flowers on stems about 15-20 feet high, they're Gymea lilies, G-Y-M-E-A, and they are in an area of about 100 kilometres or 60 miles all around Sydney. Now coming up on our right hand side is St Mary's Roman Catholic Cathedral, the largest cathedral in Australia. Beautiful inside, you should go in and have a look if you're over this way. It's not me. The Archibald Fountain in on our left, and looking up to the left, a great view of Sydney Tower towering above the city. Australia has a saint, and she's coming up on the right hand side. Well, a bronze statue of her is coming up on the right hand side. It's St Mary of the Cross. Here we go, just on our right. Mary McKillop. Now we're making our way down towards Mrs Macquarie's chair. Governor Lachlan Macquarie's wife, Elizabeth Campbell, I mentioned her previously, used to come down here in the early 1800s and overlook the harbour. And so she had a chair, a sandstone chair, cut out of the bedrock down here, and it still remains today. Now we've got a pretty stunning view down the end here, and we're going to have a 15-minute photo stop. See some on our right hand side there are called Moreton Bay fig trees. The figs are not edible by humans, but fruit bats, or what we call flying foxes, live in these trees in the night time. Now this is a fantastic location because you get photos of both the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, two of our most iconic structures, all in the one photo. The sun's on the right side and everything.